Well, good morning, everyone. Everyone, come on in. This is really Deborah D. Smith, Build Your Best Life. But Deborah today is probably getting ready to start celebrating her birthday, which is Monday. So, you guys come on in. All of you all that's been on her show are coming in commenting. I think we have a great subject today. By the way, I'm Carol Crockett, and I always meet with Deborah in coffee chat with Deborah and Carol on the third Thursday of each month. But today, on her show. I am Carol Crockett, and I have a special guest today too. Uh, is Nicki Bryant? I call her Nicki, but Nicki Bryant, and we're going to give everybody a few minutes, Nicki, to get started. And like I said, Miss Deborah is probably getting ready to celebrate her birthday, which is on Monday. And of course, she is so faithful to her platform and always got something educational or informative that's going on. I'm so excited to be connected to her because she's always full of wisdom and her creativity is amazing and always with great guests, like I said, and great content. So you don't ever want to miss Miss Deborah. But if you would, while we're waiting and giving everybody a few minutes to come in, would you like or share this information? Because we have a great topic, and I'm going to give Nicki a few minutes too, and she'll tell who she is. But our topic today, I can just go ahead and share that, is about selective mutism. And we're going to get more into that. But if you can just come on in and start sharing. We're excited about what we have to share. And so just come on in. And as I said, I'm Carol Crockett, and I have my guest, Nicki Bryant. I almost call you Nicki Smith. Anyway, but it is Build Your Best Life with Coach Deborah D. Smith. This is still her platform, and I am just substituting in today for her. And I'm excited to always help her. But like I said, today we want to share some information that Nicki, I was really just amazed when we always talking. And when you and I started talking about this subject, selective mutism. Well, hello, Curly Brunson. I see you joining us today. Come on in, and we're excited to have you. And like I said, it is Deborah D. Smith, but I'm helping her out today, and I am Carol Crockett, and I have my special guest today that we're going to, Nicki Bryant, and we're going to talk about selective mutism. And like I said, so much information out there. I was just really shocked, Nicki, when we started talking about this. But Nicki, why don't you go ahead and start sharing who Nicki Bryant is and a little bit about Nicki, and then we'll get into this amazing topic today, selective mutism.
Awesome.
Nicki?
Good morning. And Miss Deborah, if you're listening or when you listen, I just want to say happy birthday. I'm so
Yes.
excited that you're getting a chance to take some time to yourself and prepare for your birthday. Well, as Miss Carol said, I am Nicki Bryant, and I am so happy to be able to share with you today. I am an educator. I have been in education since 2006. So you guys do the math. um, Currently, I work as a special education specialist. And so I get to work with kids of all backgrounds and all forms of special education. So, from the most extreme you can think about to the kids who typically will grow up and go to college or
Wow.
get a trade or career.
Mhm.
I am a mother. I actually have a son who experienced some symptoms of selective mutism.
Mhm.
Um, and I am working to pursue an education in speech. So that is what my plan is, to go back to school in the fall and work on an education on a degree in speech. And
Hmm.
selective mutism would be one of the things that I would work with my clients on. Um,
Hmm.
but I am very passionate about people. I'm very
Yes.
passionate about children. And
Mhm.
I'm very passionate about trauma in life and how it can impact you, and you can use it in order to thrive, and in order to become the best person that the Father, that God created you to be. So I'm
Mhm.
very passionate about how trauma shouldn't break us, but
Oh,
it can
absolutely.
make us.
Oh, yeah.
The
Well,
last,
that is,
yeah.
go ahead, Nikki. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Miss Deborah spoke my quote before. When life gives you lemonade, just add some sugar and water to. I mean lemons, just
Mhm.
add some sugar and water to it and make lemonade.
Yes. And actually, Miss Deborah's on listening. I thought she's going to take a break, but she's on listening. But listen, Nikki, amazing how you and I continuously talk about
Yes.
the power of words. And that's how we started talking about this conversation,
Yes.
this topic today, because we were talking about there is so much power in words that we say, but there are also power in the unspoken word. And that's what this is about. People who are, for whatever reason, don't speak or won't speak, or like you said, you're passionate about children and people, but let's take it to the children when they are ones who don't speak or
Yes.
haven't spoken, or are reluctant to speaking. Because after we were talking about this, I said, oh my goodness, that we've kind of labeled them as being too shy, or they're just shy, and we just kind of pushed it to the side,
Mhm.
or we take the position that they don't want to speak. But let me read this quote, Nikki. It says, if you want to know somebody's mind, listen to their words. If you want to know their heart, watch their actions.
Exactly.
And this was on Facebook, and it says a winding rivers. But that is so true. If you want to know something about a person's mind, you listen to their words. The Bible tells us that so as a man, so as a man think, from his heart, he's going to speak directly from his heart. And so as he thinks, that is who he is or who she is.
Yes.
But also we know that from the mouth, the heart is also speaking as well. And that's my little paraphrase. But Nikki, would you help everyone, because you are the expert, and I'm glad you're saying you're going back to
Yes.
school because this is something you're so passionate about. But even in talking to you, I could tell how passionate you are about this subject. So would you just kind of tell us what selective mutism, what is a definition for that?
Sure. Selective mutism is a severe anxiety disorder, and it makes a person unable to speak in
Mhm.
certain social situations. So, a person who's selectively mute will select the situations in which they're mute in. And it's
Mm,
usually caused by some sort of trauma or some sort of experience that causes them to not be able to speak. And like
mm,
I said, words are so powerful. And
mhm,
people like to say silence is golden, and that's so
mhm.
very true because it's also powerful.
It
So,
is.
the reason why people are being silent is something we need to listen to. I
Mm,
tell people all the time, you have to listen to people's heart. You have to listen to
yes.
their actions, not their words, because their
Mhm,
actions tell you so much about them.
mhm. And sometimes when people are silent, I always say, even when we're communicating and having conversations, I think listening is very important. And I think we have to listen beyond the words that they're saying, basically, in order to detect, like you said, in children when they're not saying. And as I was looking at this as well, they call it selective mutism, because some children will speak in certain social settings, but they may not speak in others. And then I was reading too where it says that there are sometimes we have expectations
Mm-hmm.
of children or people. We
Yes.
expect people to say, "Good morning, how are you?"
Yes.
We
Yes.
expect them to say please and thank you. But for someone who's suffering with selective mutism and they're already having these anxieties about speaking, and then we got society that says, if I give you something, you better say thank you, right? And if you don't, well, I'll
Exactly.
label you as being what? Just a rude kid with
Yes.
no appreciation. So, but that's not always true, right?
Exactly. It's exactly what you're saying. Like you said before, some people see it as just a meek little shy person, but at
Mm-hmm.
the other extreme, people see that as defiance. And when you look at the definition of the word mute, it is an inability to speak. It is
Mm.
lacking the power of speech. Like you said, words are so powerful. Who do you know wants to just relinquish their power? Even
Yes.
as a kid, you don't want to just relinquish your power. Words are powerful. So, with
Mm-hmm.
that being said, they tend to go to the opposite extreme and they're silent. They don't give you any words at all because of
Mm-hmm.
that anxiety.
Well, Nikki, you were sharing, and I think that's kind of got us really going when we were talking about uh, the power of the unspoken word, or
Mhm.
people relinquishing their voices, because I always think that sometimes people would try to take away your voice, but we're talking about these children sometimes who've had a traumatic experience and they are full of anxiety. It's a phobia, they're fearful. But you share with me about a particular situation that really I was almost like breaking my heart, but it happens. So can you share with us about this anxiety disorder of a neighbor that you've experienced?
Yes, I definitely will. So I love Miss Deborah's platform and how she speaks to specifically to men and to Black males. And as Black women, a lot of times we tend to be single parents or we tend to raise Black males. And the way that we communicate with them is not always the most positive way of
Mm-hmm.
communicating with them. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we pass those things down generationally. So I have
Wow.
this neighbor, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say whether it's past, present, or future, but there's a neighbor that I've had, and
Mm-hmm.
I've witnessed her speak to her husband. She's actually not a single parent, but in many rights, she takes on the same dynamic as a lot of unhealthy some of the unhealthy language that we speak, that single parents can speak. And so I've seen
Mm-hmm.
her speak to her husband, I've seen her speak to her children, and there's a lot of foul language, there's a lot of aggressiveness, there's this, it's almost like it's almost like she's verbally aggressive that the only place to go is to physically be aggressive. And
Mm-hmm.
she has a lot. She has a few kids. Like, I have a few myself, so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
gonna. It's a lot. She just has a few kids, and each of them have different speech disabilities. But
Mm.
in particular, there's a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids are the kids that the older kids, they have a speech disability based on
Wow.
the same type of treatment at home. And so they now have some articulation problems. You can't really understand what some of them say. One of them is just real reserved. He just talk at all. And then there's there's a baby. And this baby is who really caught my eye. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
diagnosing anybody in this particular family. We will talk about some people that really have been diagnosed. But I will say all of the signs and the symptoms of selective mutism are showing in these kids. And my suggestion to this person is to have your kids, have the baby um checked out with the actual psychiatrist and a speech pathologist.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that being said, the child has the ability to speak. I've heard the child speak before. They have asked me for things. And they've not in multiple situations, just once, and then all of a sudden it was like freezing up. But on one on one particular day, they asked me for some things. We were talking about, I was talking to one of the other siblings, and they were telling me their age, and so I told the baby, I said, "In your," I'm gonna say two. I'm not gonna say the actual age. And you're two, and the baby tells me two, and every single time I see the baby, smiling, hugs me, like that. But Will refuses to talk. So I was one day we had like chips and soda and all that, right? So the baby wants the juice and the chips that we have. Instead of asking for it, she just walks up and looks at you. Um, there were times when like the baby wanted to ride her scooter, and
Mhm.
instead of asking, she'll just go get the scooter, and then and that's a symbol of you going to get it. So clearly, cognitively, she has no delays. She understands her needs and wants. She
Mhm.
understands how to get the things that she needs and wants, but as far as verbalizing it, she does not. And
Mhm.
it's not that she can't, it's that she doesn't. And I've observed her with her mom, with her dad, with her siblings, and there's no
Mhm.
speech whatsoever. However, like I said before, we've talked. So I know she can clearly speak, but
Mhm.
chooses not to. And when you look at the social situation in the household,
Mhm.
there's a reason
Mhm.
why there's a freezing up, because there's
Mhm.
if you whatever you say, whatever you do could cause you to be verbally abused.
Mm. And
Very-
that's the trauma that you're talking about too. And like you said, we're not pinpointing anyone in particular because, as you say, sometime as single moms, we get a little bit aggressive sometimes with those boys because you think if I don't show any muscles here, I may not can save him. And then, like you said, I love Deborah's platform as well because that's one of the things that she talks about, how important it is for us to try to save our boys now rather than to try to, fix them when they're older men. And something, I know I'm not quoting it exactly right. But Nikki, you said, how this household and the even though she's not single, but the aggression
yes.
and the verbal, the verbal, that could be verbal abuse in a sense.
Yes, it
you
is.
know but it's caused this fear and trauma of
Yes.
these children where, like you say, they've got different delayed disorders
Hmm.
about speaking, but they are able to speak. And now tell me this, Nikki, because sometimes and I think they said like it's usually between 2 and 4, you kind of talked about that you can kind of see this delay selected, and that's why it's called selected, because they speak when they really choose to.
Exactly.
But how is it that, like you said, the child clearly can speak, but why do they need to? And sometimes as parents, they can be enabling them. For example, if they just point, this is what I want, and
Exactly.
you immediately go to that because you figured out that nonverbal conversation to go ahead and give them what they want rather than to embrace
Yes.
are asking them to speak. But let me just stop. We've got people coming on here, and you
Good.
can address that in a minute. But hi, Curly is on. Miss Deborah, happy birthday again, coming Monday. Tamika, good morning. Good morning, Deacon Dan. And let's see, Curly has a question. He said, did that family get any help, Nikki, that you know of? The one that we're talking about, did they get any help? And good morning, Peggy. How are you? Good
Things,
question.
yes,
Curly asked that one.
yes, great question. Things have been suggested. Um,
Mhm.
and as far as there's help. They're getting help as the kids go to school, but there should be some in addition to the speech. It's beyond that, because
Mhm.
it's an anxiety problem. So that means that there are multiple traumas that are associated with
Mhm.
it. So it takes
Mhm.
more than just a speech pathologist to help with this particular disorder. You need a psychiatrist. And
Mhm.
some kids get on a medication regimen because of the amount of anxiety that they have. So
Mhm.
multiple layers of help.
So, Nikki, what happens if, they said it's probably easy between 2 and 4 to diagnose these kids or recognize some of the symptoms that they're going through. But my question is, what happens if they're not diagnosed? And how do you see that play into them, to their behaviors and things that they do in the latter part, like, as they go into to teenage years and high school and junior high school? Is there anything that you've noticed that will occur?
Yes, the funny part about it is there are symptoms that happen as early as elementary school. So, like I said, I have a son who has some characteristics of it, and the neighbor that I'm speaking of has some kids that are characteristic of it. They tend
Uh-huh.
to get labeled as not being capable of doing certain tasks. For example, my son, he was able to read at a second grade level in first grade, and
Mm-hmm.
he could comprehend a lot of things that most kids couldn't comprehend. And when he did start speaking, sometimes his teachers would be like, "Oh wow, you're far beyond your years in comprehension." But prior to that, his first grade teacher, we had a bunch of conversations about how she felt like he needed to be retained, how he had comprehension issues, how he was defiant. And the same thing I will say with the neighbors' children. Their kids have been labeled with a bunch of different disabilities and disorders, and I can't say whether or not they have those learning disabilities, but I will say that it's I believe it's more linked to the speech than anything else. So as
Mm-hmm.
early as elementary school, people start to label the kids as
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful and defiant and disabled, and
Mm-hmm.
they think that they have like academic difficulties that the kid really doesn't have. And I love the fact that you asked that, because I've had a student in the past where like I said, I'm a specialist. I go different campuses, and
Mm-hmm.
I work with teachers. So one student in particular was having a struggle, and she was one of those kids that was in a bilingual class, right? So most of the instruction was done in Spanish, and there was and then but when you're in special education, you get your instruction in English because we need to teach you how to read in English. And
Mm-hmm.
so, speaking with the Spanish teachers, I was told she just won't do anything. She just refuses to do anything that we ask her to do. And I think that she needs. I don't think that she's capable of learning to read. I don't think that she's capable of performing as she should in this classroom. And they wanted to put her in a class for like severe and profound kids, like the classes where your kids with Down syndrome or some sort
Mm-hmm.
of genetic disability would be. And the more I watched this kid, and this kid was actually diagnosed with selective mutism. So we're going to be from the kids that the neighbors' kids need to be checked on, to this is actually a person who had it. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's selective. So with me, I
Mm-hmm.
could get the child to talk, but I'm friendly, I'm kind, and I kind of knew how to bring some of her shell out. So I'd say, like, I like your shoes. That forces you to
Mm-hmm.
say thank you because I'm nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then of
Mm-hmm.
course she would turn around, and like when I would come back, she'd like my shoes or whatever. So it kind of opened up some dialogue. But all of
Mm-hmm.
that to say, the teachers were ready to put her in a class with kids who have genetic disabilities. So those are the
Mm-hmm.
kind of that happen. People will label you as defiant. So they think you have a behavior problem. Or people will label you as having an academic disability. And all of that to say, as you get older, like you were saying, how does that affect an older kid? Well, if I've been not challenged my entire life, then how does that
Wow.
affect job wise? How does that affect me career wise? How does that affect my social communication?
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna negatively impact everything. While I may have the ability to be just like what quote unquote normal is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the help, what's going to happen is I'm going to be isolated, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be minimized as a human being. So there are things that I could have accomplished in life that I won't accomplish because people don't understand me and they're choosing not to listen to my actions as
Hmm.
opposed to, going back to
But
that part.
you're freezing a little bit. But Nikki, also, I got so many questions on this, Nikki. Oh my goodness. But when, like you said, when very early, if a child is not diagnosed,
Hmm.
is there should they go to a professional to make sure that they are getting the child diagnosed? That's question number one. But even now that the kid that you just spoke about has been diagnosed, and now in education, and I'm a retired educator, I can truly say I probably messed up sometimes, because you don't know. And then that was not something when I was there we talked about. You put them in but now you said that you talked about how you lovingly connected with this young lady or this baby. But can you imagine that if selective autism is created by some type of traumatic experience or anxiety in some area, somewhat, can you imagine, like you said, getting her put into a class where there is totally genetic disabilities in opposed to her being misdiagnosed? To me, that would create another trauma or another traumatic experience with that. So with you being in education now, do you see how this can be, how teachers are misdiagnosing this, and the effect that it can have, and what can educators do to even assist them, even if they don't know, to assist getting help for the children? Because if you can just say you're going to mislabel them, she's in sped, she's reluctant, she's defiant, he or she defiant, and you put them over there and you put them to the side, like you were saying, in a long run, you're creating another disability. You're creating a place where they are not going to be able to communicate. They're not going to be able to go into the job market and be able to compete, because we've made this mislabeling of them, put them in a certain track of, and then you put them to the side, and they're not even they can learn, but we put them to the just push them to the side and let them sit.
Yes.
That just breaks my heart to think about that. But
So, to answer question number one, yes,
okay, I'm glad you're keeping up with them because I got plenty.
you should be diagnosed by a professional. So,
Mhm.
it's a psychological disorder, right? So it's anxiety based and it's also communication based. So usually your
Okay.
psychologist, a psychologist or psychiatrist and a speech pathologist can go ahead and get that label for you.
Hmm.
As educators, what can we do? In order,
Hmm.
that was question number two. What can we do? Or parents or friends or neighbors or whomever, what can we
Hmm.
do to ensure that those kids get the best possible quality of life? That's basically the question.
Yeah, all the way around, but that was it. Yes.
We want to if you there are referrals that schools can make.
Hmm.
um if you're a district similar to mine, we have different clinics that we can refer you to that are income based and can be free. And then also, definitely, you can always request speech evaluations, and that's free at any it's free anywhere at any campus. So you can talk to your school counselor if you know an if you have a psychiatrist or psychologist. If you when you go to the pediatrician, talk about
Hmm.
those signs, and they can refer you to a counselor. But like you said, in the end, the words are so powerful that the lack of words can impact you
Mm.
in a way that will impact your career and I think
Hmm.
Moses was a good example of that, don't you think?
Yes,
His
absolutely.
wanting to speak impacted his career somewhat. It gave his
Hmm.
brother a role, Aaron, that should have been his. So the same thing with our kids at school and stuff. It impacts them in a way where you want your kids to have a good GPA. You want your kids to go to college for free. That's what I always say. You want scholarships, right? So in order
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that those kids get the best quality education, we need to make sure that they're able to communicate with us. And so
Mm-hmm.
there are ways to, and you just go through your teacher. Hey, I noticed this about my kid, or the teacher can tell the parent, I noticed this. Are you okay with signing some papers so that we can get them evaluated?
Mm-hmm.
Evaluations are not negative, just information so that we can,
Mm-hmm.
do a better job of educating.
And we just can't ignore some of the symptoms that you talked about. And I always
Yes.
think preventive medicine is better. And if even if you don't know, if you think that some of these things have occurred, like you said, if it's, the school offers testing for you, you should take advantage of it. I'd rather rule out what it's not than to be living with it and it is, and we don't take the advantage of it. So good information. And you know what,
Yes.
Nikki, you talked about in the scripture, it says, uh, well, this is a phobia, this is a fear, this is an anxiety, and we know that God does not give us a spirit of fear, right?
Yes.
And
No,
so
not
when
at
our children are faced with fear and anxiety, we know that is not,
all.
I mean, we can call it whatever man wants, but then at the spiritual aspect of it, God doesn't want us, as well as our babies, to have that fear and anxiety. And especially like you brought up about Moses, that he couldn't, that he refused or couldn't speak or didn't speak, and he needed Aaron to come along and speak on his behalf. But thank God he eventually understood he could, right?
Yes,
And he
yes,
began to speak, for the Lord. But the same thing is true, and I love that story too, because that just tells us, there are times that, we can choose not to speak. I think the Bible also talks about there is a time for us to speak, but there's also a time to be quiet. But,
mhm,
to be in a place where sometimes as adults and maybe, not even having that, but I think it's still a part of that selective mutism, because if you are in a big place and you feel like everybody's talking and then you feel like you gotta say something, or I don't know about you, but have you been in a place and you didn't say anything and you get in your car and you're like, I should have said this and I had this to say and you didn't. So isn't that still somewhat a part of that selective
yes.
mutism where you make that decision? Because I've had
Mhm,
those conversations in the car. Man, why did I let her say that? Or why didn't I speak up? And those
mhm,
kind of things. But through it all, I know we're really focusing on these children, but there are times that the Bible tells us that we should speak, and there's a time that we shouldn't speak. And that's what I mean. That's the power of discernment and
yeah.
power of knowing when my boy, I'm not letting anybody take my voice away, but there are sometimes we need to be able to decide, is this
Mhm,
the right time? But we can't be fearful when I believe God is asking us to step up and
yes.
speak. And then with like this, it may be a time. Now, it may be a time that you can speak on behalf, but now really sometimes I've been very frustrated when people decided that my voice wasn't important and they were going
Mm,
to speak on my behalf, that I didn't need a spokesperson to speak on my behalf, but they took it upon themselves. So, at
yes.
that time Moses might have needed Aaron, but there are some people that's just not trying to help me as being Aaron. They just will, they won't let you say what you need to say, or they interrupt you before you can finish saying. And like I said, I'm a firm believer that I need a little wait time, and it does irritate me sometimes when people don't allow me to have that wait time. And I think that's really good when we're teaching too, as well, that we don't we teach the teachers. You're a teacher of teachers too. Give the
Yes.
kids some wait time, let them be able to
Yes.
process some of their thoughts, because
Yeah.
everybody's not really fast on their
Mm.
feet. What help me, Nikki? Just help me.
And you're so right. You do give them wait. The wait time is important. Another thing that's important is giving them nonverbal communication tools. So while I may require you to say that you need to go to the restroom, I can give you a restroom symbol too to show me. But when
Oh.
you show me the restroom symbol, I may have you say restroom, or like I may give you the word. So you don't know you don't know the word that you're trying to tell me, or the words that you're trying to tell me, or you can't produce them on your own, or you don't want to speak them. So instead of allowing you to just get out of, like, if you want lunch, I may have you
Mhm,
tell me, I want, chocolate milk. What kind of milk do you want? Chocolate or
mhm,
white? I want chocolate. And you have to tell me,
mhm,
I want chocolate. I had a teacher who, one of her strategies was you have to give your 2 cents every time you leave. And what she would do every day is she would
I
give the
love it.
kids 2 pennies. And every
Okay.
single day before you could leave her class, you had to have given your 2 cents, your 2 pennies, which
I
meant that
love
you
that.
raised your hand and you talked twice, and that let nobody get out of talking. So I think you have to give um, different strategies in order to provide the kids that the ability to talk. And like the kids with that actually are diagnosed with selective mutism, your speech pathologist should be able to work with you
Mhm,
as a parent and as a teacher on
mhm,
strategies that you can use to better, help that child
mhm.
to
And I
teach.
love that you said you can use symbols and signals, and then you go back and use words to embrace or to solidify what they're saying. And so after a while, I can see where it'll reverse, and then they'll give you the word, and perhaps you
Yes.
can reassure them that here's the symbol. And so I can really see how that would be very helpful. But
Yeah.
Nikki, I don't want us to run out of time because there is a well-known person that we want to get to, who you said, and I've heard the story too about her selective mutism. So
Yes.
it's Miss Maya Angelou, and so I'm going to let you tell us the story, because when we brought that up, I hadn't really thought about the connection, but
Hmm.
I'd seen the story. So let's go ahead and share before we have to go, because I think it's kind of goes into the questions that I ask. Can it go into adulthood? And her
Definitely.
story is very interesting. So share, Nikki.
So I love a quote that you have, Miss Carol. What you articulate, you activate.
Yes.
So Miss Maya, she had a traumatic experience with her mom's boyfriend when she was a kid, and she spoke about it. And when she spoke about it, he ended up going to jail for a day, and her
Mhm.
family did not see that as justice. So it is thought that some of her uncles went out and took justice on the man. And so the man ended up, after serving his one day of jail, 4 days later, he was found unalive. Um,
Oh.
yeah. And so Maya thought that her words triggered that. So his
Mm.
traumatic experience triggered her to speak, and then that they then layered another traumatic experience with making him be unalive. And and so she then decided that she was no longer going to talk. And I'm going to speak. I'm going to say her actual quote.
Okay.
She said, "I thought my voice killed him. I
Mm.
killed that man because I told his name." She later said, "And then I thought I would never speak again because my voice would kill anyone." So anxiety, fear, trauma caused one of the greatest speakers, one of the greatest civil rights activists to ever live, to not speak. And she was known to have selective mutism. And I
Mm.
love the fact that we've talked about educators and education this whole time, because the person who impacted her the most and got her to speak again was a teacher. She had
Wow.
to start writing and reading poetry. And in writing and reading poetry, she began to start to speak again. And
Wow.
that was her therapy.
Mm.
Writing words and reading words and having love. And I think that If we look at selective mutism, the thing that causes it, if we really
Mhm.
want to talk about trauma and what it really is, and anxiety and what it really is really just evil and hate. But
Wow. Mhm.
in all the situations that we've talked about, the little girl that I was telling you guys about, that I ended up, you know, working with the teacher on and getting her to talk. And by the way, she did start talking and she was reading on grade level and all of that
Oh,
stuff.
that's good. Uh-huh.
Got her to start talking again. But through
Mhm.
love and kindness and patience and just the fruits of the spirit, we were able to get that baby to start talking. And the same thing with Maya. She started talking through love and kindness and patience and grace. And um, so I think it goes to that Bible scripture where God says He causes all things to work for the greater good of those who love
Right.
Him,
Mhm.
who are called according to His
Mhm.
purpose. So I think if we it's all about loving them through, and the
Mhm.
therapy is
Mhm.
really love and patience and kindness and systematic and just teaching them how to get through the trauma. Yeah,
Mhm.
if I were
That
to put
is
it.
so it's so good, Nikki. But yeah, my favorite quote is what you articulate, you activate. And just can you imagine that's the
Mhm.
power of us speaking out, but
Yes,
also what you're unable to articulate keep
yes,
put you in a place that you cannot
yes.
activate that because you haven't been able to speak.
Mhm.
But we know that and I do say sometimes I do quote this a lot, there's power in our words. They can create, words of creative power. They can heal. We see that with Maya Angelou, even though it was in written form, but it was
Yeah.
an opportunity for her to express
Mhm.
where she was and not be fearful because, like you said, that was like double trauma for her as well.
Yeah.
But what you they can hurt you, our words can heal us, they can hurt us, and they can be harmful to us as well. But I love the fact that give teachers some kudos
Yes.
because it was a teacher who recognized that. So, it's not to put our teachers down. They're doing a great job, but I believe too there are things that we don't know. And so that's for us today to look to see how we can better educate ourselves,
Mhm.
and we are in such an informational type world today that everything is pretty much at our
Yeah.
fingertips. And so I always say, if you don't know, ask Google, because Google knows everything. And if you can't even formulate it in words, you
Mhm.
kind of put a few of them out there, and Google can come up with that. But Nikki, I
So Miss Carol has cut out on us, and she was telling us about something she found. Here she
I
comes.
don't know. I found myself not being here, and so anyway,
I like that.
technology. But I wanted to find it, and I guess I hit the wrong thing. But her name is Herta
Hmm.
Mueller,
Hmm.
and she says, "I have packed myself into silence, or deeply, so deeply. I've packed myself into silence so deeply, and for so long that I can never unpack myself in words." When I
Mm.
speak now, she said, I only pack myself a little differently. I thought that was just so good because in the silence of words, she's learned to pack herself in the silence so deeply and for so long, and then all of a sudden, she has to unpack herself by, with the words that she's not able to speak, or by I can never unpack myself in words. She said, excuse me, and when I speak, I only pack myself a little differently. That's kind of what Maya did too.
Yes.
Had to unpack herself a little bit differently. So, what do you think about that while I drink some water?
You know what? I like I when with their articulation quote, like you said, articulate you articulate you activate what you articulate.
Yes.
With my, I totally agree with the unpacking of the words. When you think about the words she used to
Hmm.
impact us after her silence, she was able to learn how to choose words
Hmm.
carefully and how to
Hmm.
choose words that were uplifting. To this day, we still quote her like,
We
what
do.
about rising? I rise. Like as a woman, we rise,
Oh my
right?
God.
What about
Yes.
when you think about her words, they are so powerful in the unpacking. And she's so creative because she's withdrawn into herself. So again, it's not that the mutism was a bad thing. It was just God causing that trauma to work for her good, that trial to work for her good. So I
And
love
I
her.
love that we, we look at her and then we can look from where we started with the family that you talked about. You talked about one of your babies having some selective mutism, but you were able there. But you can still see that, man calls it a disability, but God can take it and turn it around and
Mhm,
use it for our good or for their good. So it goes back to us not giving up on people and not calling a situation hopeless when God says there's hope in
mhm,
me. And
exactly.
so we don't want people to be discouraged because there's something God can take from each one of us and use it for his good and
Yes,
also for his glory as well.
yes.
But Nikki, this has been such a great conversation. Is any last minute final words, some wisdom that you'd like to share before we get ready to go?
The only thing that I wanted to say is, like you said, there is power in words. And
Yes.
even words that are unspoken, there is power in the unspoken word. We just need to make sure that we use that power in the way that
Mhm.
God created us to use that
Yes.
power.
Mhm.
We need to use it to do exceedingly
Right.
abundantly above all things we can ask or think.
Mhm.
Because it is the power that worketh in us, that worketh in us, be it silent word or verbalizing words. If you've
Mhm.
gone through a trauma, if you're in a trauma, if you're in a traumatic experience, you need to be working with God and working through it so you can use it according to how He would like you to use it.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I feel like my student and Miss Maya did with their mutism, and my son as well.
Oh wow.
I can, yeah.
Yeah.
It has
So
been
the power of words and the power of God's word and the power of God's word, you always say when we align our words with his words, that's when we become even more powerful because we're not relying upon just our abilities, but we are relying upon him to help us through the things that we're all going to be deficient in something, but just that power. Well, Nikki, thank you so much. We always start talking and we end up with so many things that we could talk about. And I just appreciate you coming on and Deborah, I appreciate you allowing us to share this because once Nick and I started talking about this, I was like, this is great information. And so, Deborah, thank you so much for letting us come on. But listen, y'all, don't forget on September 28th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Miss Deborah's having a leaders chat with a guest speaker of Catherine Trotter of Jacksonville, Florida. So you don't want to miss tuning in for that. So mark your calendars, September 28th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our leaders chat with Catherine Trotter of Jacksonville, Florida. And so I want to just thank you all who tuned in, and I see you in the chat, Peggy and Deborah and Mr. and Deacon Dan and Charlie Curly Bronson. Thank you so much for your input. And Deborah, we want you to enjoy your time off and have a wonderful birthday on Monday. And we look forward to our coffee chat I look forward to our coffee chat. So kudos and happy birthday to you, Deborah. And I know Deacon Dan is going to make it a celebratory time for you. And so he's awesome in taking care of Miss Deborah. But thank you once again, everyone who tuned in. And so Miss Deborah will be back at her regular time. And thank you for allowing us, Nikki and myself, to share at this time. So, hey, selective mutism is real. And so it is up to us when we can take an opportunity to even venture out a little bit more and find out more information, because Miss Deborah's platform, she's about helping young people and boys and girls and everyone. So that's a subject that we can continue to look at and be able to share with other people. So, all right, then we'll have a good day. And of course, we know Miss Deborah's heart is always to help others. And I was trying to find her quote, but I can't find it right now. But y'all know what she always quote. And I love that quote, but I can't find it now. But have a good rest of the day and have an amazing weekend. And we will see you on, I believe she's on Tuesday. All right. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.